Buying your first car in Gran Turismo works as a difficulty gauge for your playthrough. The usual approach is buying a Japanese car around the 200 horsepower mark, like a Nissan Silvia, a Mazda RX-7, Toyota Supra or Honda Prelude. Not us, however. This is a Fiat 500, a piece of Italian culture with 23 horsepower, and it just so happens to be under 10,000 credits. We have a starter car. Let this be the start of my descent to madness, as I try to complete as many events as possible with this slow Fiat. Our game of choice is Gran Turismo 2, as 95% of the events take place under a single race format, allowing us to complete more events. Despite of car of choice, each career has to start with the classic Sunday Cup. The first race takes place in Tahiti Road, a track unique to Gran Turismo 2. Our opponents for this race are a mix of Kei car and compact cars, which have 3 times more power than our Fiat, and we can see right off the line as they pull away from us. Yes, the 500 is moving, I know it doesn't seem like it. For some reason we are holding the clutch for an eternity before we are able to build revs and shift into second gear. To make matters worse, the 500 has ridiculously long gears which don't suit it at all. Our odds become even worse as the first section of Tahiti Road has a steep uphill section where the Fiat almost stalls, and it loses the slight amount of momentum we managed to build. We are more than 13 seconds behind by the time we reach the first sector, a gap which will keep growing and growing. We finish the race 18 seconds behind the leader. There's no hope of winning this race. Tahiti Road isn't a good track for the 500, but there aren't many options for us to race, so where we go next? The like button, of course. Remember to click that thumbs up icon. Do it for the Fiat 500. There's one race with slower opponents and a track which doesn't have any uphill sections. The Kei Cup has its first race at rope short. While the 500 crawls off the line in the same way I crawl out of bed before my morning coffee, our opponents are pulling away. Now the good part is, they are slower than our previous opponents. The bad part is, rope short is almost an oval composed by fast-paced corners and long straights. As the race goes on, our opponents keep pulling away. Our hopes of winning this race are next to none. Watching this car struggle to upshift is hilarious and disappointing in equal parts. I cannot comprehend why third gear is so long, as if this 2-cylinder engine needs to be more fuel efficient. While driving a 500 through Rome sounds like a dream holiday for some, we aren't here to cruise and it's obvious we need upgrades. Now we have 2000 credits, which is half the cost of a Stage 1 Turbo, which will give us a well-needed boost. One might say the reasonable approach will be to finish last in Rome until we can afford a turbo, but expecting reasonable choices from someone who decided to do this run is hopeful thinking. Since I can't improve the 500's power, I will improve its acceleration with one of the upgrades which most people ignore and can totally transform a car: drivetrain upgrades. I can afford a Stage 1 clutch and Stage 2 flywheel, which ends in me being as broke in Gran Turismo as I am in real life. Nice. The small boost in acceleration doesn't do wonders, but it's enough to reach 100 km per hour through the main straight while the leading Suzuki Cappuccino pulls away from the pack. I'm rather close to the rest of my opponents, and I finished the race a second behind from 5th place, which is a massive improvement compared to my previous attempt. With 5th place within reach and given Rome shorts is a minute shorter than our previous race at Tahiti, I decide to grind this race until I can afford a turbo kit for our Fiat. The following race goes much better. By the end of the first lap, I'm 5 seconds behind the pack. I started to learn different lines and ride through the track holding as much speed as possible. I don't even have to brake for some corners given how slow this car is, and by holding my speed I managed to close the gap with my opponents. We are all packed together by the end of the race, but still, I am last. This situation repeats for another race, but the following race offers an interesting opportunity. The entire race is a carbon copy of my previous attempts, until we reach the end of the main straight. The white I had ahead of me goes wide on the following turn, and I managed to overtake it. I am holding 5th place and 2 cars ahead of me are having a battle. Despite despite my best efforts, I can't catch up to them and they pull away after the final turn. But I have problems behind me as the Daihatsu is trying to overtake me. I start to weave and block until I realize I won't be able to hold it behind me, and I just block the road with my 500, forcing the Daihatsu to push me into the finish line. I'm 5th. Those 200 extra credits feel like such a victory. Oh yes. I managed to score another 5th place as both a Subaru and Mitsubishi go wide in the same corner. However, my defense wasn't as dramatic as the previous attempt, just the usual blocking maneuvers, even if I couldn't hold both cars behind me. If you are wondering how I have the habit of blocking and weaving, it's because I always play with underpowered cars. If you want to see me race live, you can watch my streams right here on YouTube. I stream at least every Sunday and I've been playing Gran Turismo 2, doing all sorts of challenges. If you want to join your next stream, subscribe and click the bell icon, you won't regret it. After many races where the best result I could achieve was 5th place, I managed to crawl my way towards a turbo kit for our Fiat 500. Going from 22 to 74 horsepower is a welcome change as we return to Rome. As we go off the line, we finally see our modified Fiat into action, as it manages to keep up with our opponents. It feels so good to have a competitive car at long last. Having more power doesn't fix the atrocious gearing on our 500, but we have enough acceleration to keep up with the pack through the entire track. It's a close race as my opponents can overtake me at long straights. However, I've been racing in this track for an hour, and my cornering lines are way better than the AI, which allows me to cross the finish line on 1st place, the first victory of the run, which means we can finally start tackling other events, but not before grinding Rome short for a few more times for prize cars and extra money, along with buying a racing muffler and performance chip for a 500. With our new powerful Fiat, it's time to go back to the Sunday Cup for revenge, and we get destroyed by a Suzuki R-Wagon of all things. Not once, but twice. No racing game is complete without a bit of rubber banding, so it's time to try again with this in mind. Despite all of our upgrades, the 500 still struggles on uphill sections, but it's not enough to slow our pace down. It's a tight race as I don't have enough power to pull away from them, meaning I have to defend my lead by blocking them. Given Tahiti Road has 2 long straights, I am saved by the corners as the AI is quite slow through them. As we approach the finish line, I manage to block the Subaru behind me before it manages to overtake me, scoring yet another win for the run. It feels good to beat the race I usually start my runs with after so many attempts. With this affair settled, it's time to race against more key cars in Seattle. Just like Rome Short, we have a shortened version of the classic Seattle circuit. For a change, we managed to beat our opponents off the line, climbing to 1st place. Small shout out to the silver Daihatsu Terios right here. It's like a micro SUV, it's hilarious. It's not a challenge for us as we take the win after a single attempt, a first for the run so far. Another first try win comes with the final race of this Kei Cup at Tahiti Road, netting us a few car prizes which we sell for more money, of course. The next tier of cars to beat are European compacts, which our 500 needs its biggest upgrade to compete against. After buying a Stage 2 turbo kit, we are ready to challenge them. Now we have a car which is rather interesting. The 500 has over 100 horsepower with its new turbo, and it weighs next to nothing. Acceleration isn't brilliant, but handling, that's another story. Despite being bullied by a Toyota Yaris and their tire grid afterwards, we end up fighting with a Volkswagen Polo in the final turn. After a totally clean maneuver which won't give me a 5-second penalty, we win the first race. The next race takes us once again to Seattle Short, where we face a grid of 4 yellow cars. Nice attempt, game, but you won't charm me. I won't won't have mercy. Another first try victory for the Fiat 500, which is hungry for more, which takes us to Autumn Ring for the final race of the Compact Cup, where I have to face a Volkswagen Lupo which makes a dive bomb from out of nowhere and we have a small battle between us. I managed to overtake and hold my lead by blocking and holding the right lines. Another victory for the 500 again. With these compacts behind us, it's time to search for new opponents. It's back to the Sunday Cup for the second race in High Speed Ring, a track which doesn't suit the 500 at all. Slow acceleration and top speed aren't a good combination, even more when our opponents are driving Silvias and even the Fiat Coupe. Off the line we are beaten by these faster cars, which is to be expected. The good thing is, High Speed Ring is a wide track with bank turns, which the AI takes with a bit of caution, something which comes in handy as we approach the tighter section of the track, to the point where I can dive bomb and go from last to first in a single corner. I managed to finish first, ahead from the pack, not bad for cars which hover around the 200 horsepower mark. The final race of the Sunday Cup takes us to Red Rock Valley, a track which hasn't seen a return since Gran Turismo 2. It's a really unique and fast track, with wide, fast corners and long straights. Holding my speed through the first bank corner makes the difference between me and my opponents. Even if they pull away off the starting line, I overtake them all by taking the right lines on the second and third corner, forced to brake early while I get to build a small gap with them. I love overtaking cars in packs. It's hilarious how they all stay together and drive the entire race in the same manner. While taking the right lines is vital, I have to talk about how I fixed the gearing for our little Fiat. By now I bought a racing transmission and started to play with the gears. I made them shorter in order to improve acceleration and maintain the engine closer to peak power. Shorter gears improve acceleration, which is vital to have a quicker exit from corners. Of course, one has to play a balance, as you still need decent top speed for the straights. There's no such thing as the perfect gear setup, and I decided to compromise by sacrificing top speed, which I struggle to reach. So far my approach seems to work, as I'm able to push the 500 and score another victory. With the Sunday Cup completed, I decide it's time to see if this modified Fiat can tackle the Gran Turismo League. We start with the Japanese League. Each race is held at Midfield Raceway, a track which doesn't suit the 500. It has long straights and it's almost driven at full throttle. For the first race we have to face cars which we have seen previously, a mix of Kei cars and a few Toyota Yaris which really aren't a challenge, scoring a first try victory. For our second race we face better cars. Our main concern is the Honda S2000 and Silvia S15, both of them in yellow. Funny coincidence. They secure first and second place respectively in no time as I start to work my way towards them. By now I start to struggle in each straight, as I have no hopes of keeping up with my opponents. They manage to overtake me like a sitting duck, and I'm only saved by the fact there's a turn ahead of me. I can take the lead as I outpace the eye through the few corners Midfield Raceway has. The problem is, it's all for nothing as there's a steep uphill section before the massive main straight. My opponents overtake me with no effort, and I start the final lap behind the S2000 and S15. Not all drivers are equal however, and they brake a bit too late for the first turn. The Silvia is the first whip who touches grass in its life, and I merge with the S2000 for a second before I overtake it. So far we have a small battle where I recover the lead through the corners. Nothing matters as we reach the main straight for the final time. The S15 managed to recover second place and it wants to overtake me. However, it's going to fall victim to my blocking skills and it's going to touch grass for another time as we cross the finish line. I am starting to find the limits of this little Fiat, it seems, as my final victory was rather lucky. I have no way of improving my acceleration and top speed. There's not much I can do in faster tracks, and this becomes obvious with the following race. The final race of the Japanese Nationals has a grid packed with cars over 300 horsepower, and it doesn't matter what I do, I always lose in the main straight. After multiple attempts, There's no way I can build a decent gap with my opponents. I can't beat this race at all. It's rather disappointing, but it was bound to happen sooner or later. We still have a lot of national races to tackle, starting with the French National Series, both races taking place at Tahiti Road. The second and final race is worth mentioning as we have to deal with a couple of Renault Clio V6, a very quick car which falls to our superior cornering skills and never comes back. We have another 2 wins, or should I say 4? The Italian Nationals are next and don't present much of a challenge. I have to say the 500 is starting to impress me, as it can win against cars which are much faster when the track layouts are on its side. One which I didn't expect to go well was Laguna Seca, which we have to race 3 times with different opponents for the US Nationals. While the first and second races have us dealing with 4 cars and other slow cars, the final one has an interesting lineup composed by muscle cars, classic and modern. The leading cars, which are a Mustang SPT and a rather scary Shelby Series 1, which is a car with excellent handling and top speed. These 2 pull away from me as I struggle in the uphill section of the track. Despite the strong pace my opponents have, the AI is quite bad at dealing with the corkscrew, which means I get to overtake the SPT Mustang and close the gap with the Series 1. This isn't enough, however, and I stay behind these cars through the final lap of the race. It's fun as we are all packed together and I do my best to hold the Series 1 behind me. I rather let the other cars go past as I find they struggle a bit more with corners. My strategy works as we go past the corkscrew for the final time, where a green Camaro blocks my line and throws my entire race through the window. Well, fear not, we still have a couple of corners more. I managed to maintain my pace and overtake the SPT Mustang before the main straight, scoring another win against these powerful cars. Now it's time to cross the pond and face the British national events in Trial Mountain. Again, the first 2 races aren't the most interesting as they were easy victories. For the third and final race, I have to race against TBRs, which are pretty quick and are rather challenging. But given how I had to memorize this track to beat a Vector M12 with an Easy and Silvia for another video of mine, I didn't struggle with this race. The only set of national races left are the German nationals, all 3 events taking place in deep forest, and yet again is the final race which stands out thanks to its lineup. I was aware of this event being the most difficult out of the National League, as it has a few roofs to deal with. These cars outpace all of the opponents we have met previously, and they prove to be a challenge as I lose a few times against them. While I was close, I couldn't catch up to them by the end. If I want to win, I have to hold my lead through the main straight and block them once again. The final section of this track is on my side as the AI is slower through the turns before the main straight, especially the final one where I get to throw the little Fiat and overtake one of the roofs as we start the final lap. There is no trophy for second place, and while I can't catch up to the dark blue roof ahead, it has to brake for the following turn, where I hold the inside and take first place with no resistance. The problem is, the next section is an uphill section where my opponent has the advantage, and it makes me look like a sitting duck. Back to second place where I stay for most of the lap. The roof doesn't manage to pull away from me and I have another opportunity to make my move. In the final turn of the track, I managed to overtake the leading car for the final time, taking first place and winning the race. This is the National League completed. There's only one event which I couldn't beat, which is a shame. It's like having all the Pokemon gym badges and losing to the Elite Four time and time again. Only that I can't grind my way out of this, given we need to win all the national events to progress to the next stage. This is as far as we will go in the Gran Turismo League, even if, to be honest, I don't think the 500 is competitive for the next tier of events. But that's alright, we have a few loose ends back as special events. For one, I have left the Clubman Cup aside, which is a step above the Sunday Cup we previously beaten. Now, given I face some similar cars as opponents in the National Series, these races aren't much of a challenge for the Fiat. The next challenge lies on beating a race which can be used for grinding. There are a few events with good price cars, but most are a challenge for the 500 as we will see in a few minutes. There is one which stands out, the final race of the 80s Car Cup. These 3 laps in Tahiti Road reward the winner with a Nissan Skyline R30 Silhouette Racer, which can be sold for 125,000 credits. While their opponents pull away at the start, they are somewhat even compared to us, which means there's a chance of victory. As my rivals struggle on the first section, I managed to take the lead, one which I hold until the end of the race, and even build a small gap between these opponents. So yes, the 500 can be used to grind your way towards a better car after spending a small fortune in upgrades. I won't deny the 500 becomes a fun car after all of these upgrades. For one, it can be competitive in events where one wouldn't bet a single dime on it, like the Muscle Car Cup. We have 3 events which happen to be in difficult tracks, such as Seattle Circuit. These older cars really struggle without any sort of setup and the AI isn't fast with them, and I add other 3 victories. While muscle cars are pretty good, they pale in comparison to the gold standard of the car community, performance wagons. Gran Turismo 2 is the only game which has a set of races dedicated to them. One of them even take places in an oval, which the 500 manages to win in the final bank turn, because these guys can't help but go wide and lose time. However, while I can beat the first 2 events, the final one takes place at Special Stage Road 5, which proves to be too much for the Fiat. This one is a loss. Another set of fast cars with 4 doors comes next, as I take the 500 back to Rome for the Luxury Sedan Cup, where an AMG C-Class is waiting for us along with other powerful sedans, which once again fall victim to a totally clean and fair dive bomb. The following races take place in Special Stage Road 5 and High Speed Ring, which are too much for us. However, there are more challenges ahead. I decide to try the first race of the Grand Touring Car Cup, a set of races which is excellent for grinding. We have opponents with cars over 300 horsepower. Now, if that wasn't enough, the track, Red Rock Valley, benefits powerful cars. Off the line, my opponents vanish from my side, which isn't a good start. It's not enough to stop me as I manage to catch up to them through the corners. By keeping a constant pace, I am able to stay away from the pack and overtake whatever car manages to be ahead of me. I managed to hold the lead on the final sector and win the race, all because the AI struggles with the final corner of the track. I can't go forward in this set of events, however, as I can't keep up with them in Grand Valley and Midfield Raceway. As we reach this stage, I can only complete single races rather than a complete series, and there's a couple more of those. We start with the Roadster Cup. While the first race was very easy, the second at Grindelwald was interesting as I couldn't break away from the pack and had to face a Dodge Copperhead which managed to stay ahead of me until the final section of the track, as I managed to overtake it before the end and I crashed into a wall. Once again, I had to resort to my totally fair tricks to beat this Dodge and bring another cup home for the Fiat. The next event I tried was the first race of the historic Car Cup at Tahiti Road, which didn't present much of a challenge, and if you are wondering, no, the 500 cannot beat the Ford GT40 at Rome. We moved back to Laguna Seca for the first race of the Sport Cars Cup. I couldn't manage to win after a few attempts. However, there's a small modification which I haven't done yet, but before applying it, I take the Fiat to its manufacturer race, where it destroys the competition. Now with that detour, I buy the final upgrade, a racing modification which reduces weight and increases downforce. I tried this upgrade at the appropriate manufacturer race for modified 500s and score another win before returning to Laguna Seca for revenge, and I managed to win, even if the AI spinning in the corkscrew was helpful. After this victory, there's not much else I can do as most races have opponents which outpace me, track layouts which don't help the 500, and both together at the same time. I decided to try rallying with the Fiat, but it was a failure as well. I figured we should wrap this challenge by trying an endurance race, so I take the Fiat to Trial Mountain for 30 laps. Funny enough, we managed to beat the competition without the challenge, to the point where I'm lapping opponents after 10 laps. laps, and given how light this thing is, I managed to finish the race without a single pit stop. I think it's a nice way to wrap this challenge as we started struggling, and now we are lapping more powerful cars with a modified Fiat. After modifying this car, it's pretty fun to drive and it can give you a few surprises with the right setup. Sure, it won't beat anything in a straight line, but it does manage to outpace a lot of cars through the corners. Probably a better driver than me can get farther in this game with this single car. However, this is as far as I can go. It was a good run. You can leave your suggestion for more challenges and videos in the comments below, along with your thoughts. Remember to leave a like if you enjoyed and a dislike if you didn't. I'll see you all soon, bye for now.